the law of war. It matters. There's a difference. Today, Americans across the country are praying for all those families that have been ripped apart. A lot of us know how it feels. It leaves a black hole in your chest when you lose family. Feeling like you're being sucked in. The anger, the pain, the sense of hopelessness. This is what they mean by a human tragedy. An atrocity on an appalling scale. But we're going to continue to stand united, supporting the people of Israel who are suffering unspeakable losses and opposing the hatred and violence of terrorism. My team has been in near constant communication with our Israeli partners and partners all across the region and the world from the moment this crisis began. We're surging additional military assistance, including ammunition and interceptors, to replenish Iron Dome. We're going to make sure that Israel does not run out of these critical assets to defend its cities and its citizens. My administration has consulted closely with Congress throughout this crisis. And when Congress returns, we're going to ask them to take urgent action to fund the national security requirements of our critical partners. This is not about party or politics. It's about the security of our world, the security of the United States of America. We now know that American citizens are among those being held by Hamas. I've directed my team to share intelligence and deploy additional experts from across the United States government to consult with and advise Israeli counterparts on hostage recovery efforts. Because as president, I have no higher priority than the safety of Americans being held hostage around the world. The United States has also enhanced our military force posture in the region to strengthen our deterrence. The Department of Defense has moved the USS Gerald R. Ford Carrier Strike Group to the Eastern Mediterranean and bolstered our fighter aircraft presence. And we stand ready to move in additional assets as needed. Let me say again, to any country, any organization, anyone thinking of taking advantage of this situation, I have one word: don't. Don't. Our hearts may be broken, but our resolve is clear. Yesterday I also spoke with the leaders of France, Germany, Italy, and UK to discuss the latest developments with our European allies and coordinate our united response. This comes on top of days of steady engagement with partners across the region. We're also taking steps at home. In cities across the United States of America, police departments have stepped up security around centers of Jewish life. The Department of Homeland Security and the Federal Bureau of Investigation are working closely with state and local law enforcement and Jewish community partners to identify and disrupt any domestic threat that could emerge in connection with these horrific attacks. This is a moment for the United States to come together, to grieve with those who are mourning. Let's be real clear. There is no place for hate in America. Not against Jews, not against Muslims, not against anybody. We reject. What we reject is terrorism. We condemn the indiscriminate evil, just as we've always done. That's what America stands for. You know, just over 50 years ago, I was thinking about it this morning, talking to the Secretary of State, the Vice President in my office. Over 50 years ago, as a young senator, I visited Israel for the first time as a newly elected senator. And I had a long, long trip, a meeting with Golda Meir in her office, just before the Yom Kippur War. And I guess she could see the consternation on my face as she described what was being faced. They were facing. We walked outside in that sort of hallway outside her office to have some photos. She looked at me all of a sudden and said, "Would you like to have a photograph?" And so I got up and followed her out. We were standing there silent, looking at the press. She could tell, I guess, I was concerned. She leaned over and whispered to me. She said, "Don't worry, Senator Biden. We have a secret rep in here in Israel." My word is what she said. We have no place else to go. We have no place else to go. For 75 years, Israel has stood as the ultimate guarantor of the security of Jewish people around the world, so that the atrocities of the past could never happen again. And let there be no doubt, the United States has Israel's back. We will make sure the Jewish and democratic state of Israel can defend itself today, tomorrow, as we always have. It's as simple as that. These atrocities have been sickening. We're with Israel. Let's make no mistake. Thank you.
Mr. President, what was your reaction?
Okay, you've just been listening to the U.S. President, Joe Biden, and his address from the White House on the Israel-Gaza war. A very strong speech. We're going to be talking to Marwan Bashara, Al Jazeera's senior political analyst. You're joining us from Paris. First, though, let's go live to Kimberly Halkett, our White House correspondent in Washington, D.C. Kimberly, it's not the first time that Biden speaks since this is day 4 of the war. Not the first time we've heard Biden, but the first time we've heard him like this, in this much detail. And, you know, he chose to open his speech with, I think, with a very strong emotional payload, it's fair to say.
Yeah, the United States has Israel's back, and certainly we've always known that in terms of the dollars that are spent, but it's certainly something that was reiterated by the U.S. president. And a lot of what we heard in this speech was things that we've heard in the past few days, that Israel has a right to defend itself, that it has, the United States wants to make sure that it has what it needs to respond. In other words, the president there, as commander-in-chief of the U.S. military, saying that it will surge in terms of the munitions that the Israeli military needs in order to defend itself. The U.S. president outlining there, we expected we might have had a few more details than we actually got from the president. We were a little thin on details there, but the U.S. president talking about his call with the Israeli prime minister, that the Israeli military is promising a swift and overwhelming response in terms of what it calls retaliation towards Hamas. What I do want to point out, though, is one sort of point of what you might call hypocrisy on the part of the U.S. president, where he talked about the United States in alliance with Israel, saying that what the distinction between what he called the terrorists is that they believe they uphold the law in terms of the rules of international law and war. He said that only terrorists would attack civilians, but clearly that is not entirely accurate, because what we've seen in recent days, obviously, is the Israeli military cutting off not only food but electricity and water to the Palestinians in Gaza. We've certainly seen the attacks that have been not surgical, but in fact being sort of a large swath of apartment complexes that we know have allowed for women, children, elderly to be caught up in this. And so for the president to say that they have been abiding by the rules of law certainly is would not be accurate, and to be partnering with Israel in this would certainly not be accurate. And I think that one more thing that we should point out in all of this is the language the president used when he talked about the United States coming together, and this is not a time for party or politics. This is about the security of the world. This is very much the type of language that we heard back around the September 11th attacks. And many people have called this Israel's 9/11, for lack of a better term or terminology. And many might be sort of almost alarmed when they hear this, because when it comes to kind of the military-industrial complex and the warmongers on Capitol Hill, one can kind of be troubled by hearing this, that maybe this is a White House pivoting towards a conflict or a broader conflict. As much as they say they are not looking to see this escalate, that they may at least be preparing for that.
Well, Kimberly, stand by, stay with us. Everything you've said is duly noted. It's also interesting to note the contrast. Even as President Joe Biden was speaking, we had the live picture of the skies over Gaza, and we saw repeated military bombardments of the Gaza Strip. Marwan, I want to bring you in, and I want to get your thoughts on this speech. U.S. President Joe Biden saying Israel has not only a right to respond, but quote, a duty to respond.
Yes, having followed Prime Minister Netanyahu, who's a very slick speaker with excellent English and an incredible reservoir of sound bites, having read his books, he was told from Netanyahu